among Republicans who don't support Donald Trump in their heart of hearts, you have two categories. This is a different discussion than people who genuinely love him, believe everything like your Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think she actually is drinking the Kool-Aid. But you have this category of people that don't actually like Trump. And within that category, you have two subcategories, okay? And let's compare two types of Republicans that don't actually like Trump. One type of Republican, and the example we'll use, is Lindsey Graham, is someone who doesn't actually support Trump. We know because of his past statements about Trump, but pretends like he does for political reasons. Then you have someone like Liz Cheney, who doesn't support or like Trump and actually stands on principle and publicly denounces Trump and campaigns against him. And we'll get to the little B-roll that you saw there on screen. But first, before getting into Liz Cheney hilariously triggering Lindsey Graham, let's remind ourselves of what Lindsey Graham, I should say, has said about Donald Trump.
Well, I want to talk to the Trump supporters for a minute. What is Donald Trump's campaign about? He's a race-baiting, xenophobic, religious bigot. And you know how you make America great again? Tell Donald Trump to go to hell. If you can't admire Joe Biden as a person, then it's probably you got a problem. You need to do some self-evaluation. Because what's not to like? He is as good a man as God ever created. He said some of the most incredibly heartfelt things that anybody could ever say to me. He's the nicest person I think I've ever met in politics. This is a defining moment in the future of the Republican Party. We have to reject this demagoguery, and if we don't reject Donald Trump, we've lost the moral authority, in my view, to govern this great nation.
Please do remember, if you haven't yet, we're so close to 1 million subscribers. That's because of you. Thank you so much. If you haven't yet, do please click the subscribe button as we charge towards that, hopefully crossing it before the election. Think about that, though. Think about expressing that. And that's why I say, not to mock, but I say that something is so fundamentally, deeply distressed and sad about Lindsey Graham. He always seems a moment, in the clip I'm going to show you, this is coming through, a moment away from just busting down in tears and admitting, I don't know why I've been doing this. I don't actually believe this stuff. Please forgive me, world. You can show this, or you are already, Jane, as a dog's barking. You can see, I remember when I was standing talking to him in the spin room and quickly you can tell he's not really making much eye contact with me, but at one moment, he made brief eye contact. And I could just feel the sadness. And I think that comes from what someone with some conscience deep down there experiences when they choose politics and power and relevance over principle. So we will get to the clip, like I said, of Lindsey Graham, very angry at Liz Cheney, and ranting about her. But first, here is what Liz Cheney has been saying about Lindsey Graham.
Congresswoman Cheney, you know how hard this is, though. You know how hard it is to break away from tribal loyalty, to do something you haven't done before. So I'd like you to address that as well. Lindsey Graham was on television yesterday saying, what are you, never Trump Republicans, what are you thinking of? How could you possibly do all of this? There are a lot of people who are listening to us who may be disillusioned with what's happening with the Republican Party, but they're afraid of paying the price because there is a cost to all of that. So what do you say to those Americans?
Well, don't listen to Lindsey Graham, number one. It's good life advice, actually.
And you can see Vice President Kamala Harris very much enjoying that. I agree, don't listen to Lindsey Graham, but I find these two figures so interesting to contrast because with some of the other people, I don't know. I don't know if they really believe it or not, but we know Lindsey Graham doesn't. We know for certain he doesn't. And so then it makes it even easier. And I know I'm doing way too much psychoanalyzing. It's not what I'm trying to do on this show regularly, but just with him, I've made it a point, maybe because of that personal experience too, talking to him ever so briefly, but he's definitely feeling the guilt. And I wish he would just go over to the Liz Cheney category of Republicans who also saw all the things that Lindsey Graham saw, but decided to say it, decided to have principle and have courage and speak out. And Liz Cheney has now started to campaign with Vice President Kamala Harris as someone who disagrees on every major issue with Harris, but agrees on the one foundational issue, which is our democracy, and understands that Trump threatens that. Now, speaking about Republicans like Liz Cheney, Lindsey Graham said this on Meet the Press.
What the hell are you doing? You're supporting the most.
I totally forgot that it started like that. That was a good tee up. And he said,
What the hell are you doing? You're supporting the most radical nominee in the history of American politics. You're trying to convince me that Donald Trump's rhetoric is the danger to this country. The danger to this country is the policies of Biden and Harris. Her fingerprints are all over this disaster. What the hell are you doing as a Republican blessing this stuff?
He's so distraught. You don't have to do it, Lindsey. This little character you choose to play because you're so scared that you won't know who you are without political relevance in the Republican Party, you don't have to. Liz Cheney proves that. Adam Kinzinger proves that. Republicans who worked in Trump's administration like Sarah Matthews and Cassidy Hutchinson prove that. And yes, the threats will come from MAGA people. I know the people I just listed experience that on the regular. But at least when they go to bed at night, they know their whole entire life, whole entire political identity is not a lie. But Lindsey Graham probably won't end up telling the truth. So there's Liz Cheney really rattling Lindsey Graham. I want to talk about the event that I cannot get these two names correct. Something about Lindsey and Liz are just all coming out at the same time. Liz Cheney appeared at an event with Vice President Kamala Harris, and it was called Country Over Party. They've held a few of these now. And it's really interesting seeing what principle looks like. It's refreshing in politics. This is principle. Liz Cheney has put principle over partisanship, and that's really good to see. This was in Wisconsin, and the introduction was kind of funny from Charlie Sykes.
But we're not going to be talking about a few things. We're not going to be talking about sharks and electrocutions. We are not going to be going through Tony Evers' 40-minute playlist and swaying to the music. We're not going to be talking about Jewish space lasers or Arnold Palmer's putting game. That's the other event down the road. The reason we're having this conversation, though, is that despite the clownishness, the stakes are so serious. This is election, again, not about the normal divisions in American politics, but about things like decency and democracy, the rule of law, whether or not we're going to shred the Constitution, and whether or not America will continue to be a shining city on the hill to the rest of the world.
Brilliant intro, hilarious. If you need from a politician, a presidential candidate, an answer to the question of would you, if you were on a boat and it was sinking, and your options were be electrocuted or jump away from the electrocution, from the battery, as Trump explained it, and be eaten by a shark. If you need an answer from a presidential candidate as to which one they'd prefer, electrocution in the case of Donald Trump, then Trump might be your person. But if you want to talk about the issues that were outlined in this event, then you might have a different option. Here is Vice President Kamala Harris making a really good point about how Trump is selling this idea of isolationism in his foreign policy, even though that wasn't what he exhibited whenever he was actually president. But now MAGA, at least, is branding themselves as wanting isolation. And Vice President Kamala Harris points out the misnomer, number one, that is, and the historical context for why, of course, we should not be war hawks, needlessly engage in war, obviously. But, for example, giving aid to Ukraine, caring about what's going on across the world, supporting our allies, upholding international institutions, how important that is.
Donald Trump's approach would be to surrender. Understand what that would mean. That is signaling to the president of Russia he can get away with what he has done. Understand, look at the map. Poland would be next. NATO, our allies, are the reason that they have been so thankful for the position of strength we have taken in bringing the allies together, is because they are fully aware of and remember, to the Congresswoman's point, World War II. Remember, this concept of isolation, we were once there as a nation, and then Pearl Harbor happened. Let's remember, recent history. Europe remembers it well. When we got attacked, Pearl Harbor, we jumped in. And it is because America jumped in that we were ultimately able to win that war. And it should be a constant reminder to us, we have to remember history, that isolationism, which is exactly what Donald Trump is pushing, pull out of NATO, abandon our friends. Isolationism is not insulation. It is not insulation. It will not insulate us from harm in terms of our national security. So I say that to emphasize a point that the Congresswoman made, and the other point I'd make is also check out where he's been on how he thinks about America's military and service members.
Yeah, and goes on to explain what we know all too well about Trump's record in disparaging people's service, recently talking about how people such as Mark Milley that say negative things about him, Trump then says he doesn't respect them as a soldier altogether, doesn't respect their service. Disgusting stuff. But on the first point that was made by Harris, it is so important that we push back against what I think in a simple sense resonates with a lot of people, just the idea of, oh yeah, it would be nice to sort of be out here on an island with no worries of the rest of the world, and we can just do our own thing, and it would save money, and let's just focus on us. And of course, the job of a president is to prioritize. The number one priority of a president of the United States is American citizens of the United States. So it's not about, oh, we're going to put other countries ahead of ourselves, as MAGA portrays it to be. But instead, we should compassionately engage in foreign policy and in foreign aid as an example of that type of foreign policy. But even as selfish as it gets, we serve our own interests in so many ways, like giving aid to Ukraine, not being completely isolationist in the way that now that's being defined by MAGA. And even though history tells us we've definitely leveraged our power in the international community for ends I very much disagree with, we have to acknowledge the solution to that is not detaching altogether. It's not abandoning NATO or abandoning our international allies at large. And I think that at least MAGA generally, even if Trump maybe isn't fully on board yet, definitely want us to disconnect from a lot of those long-time international friendships. And that's not for good. They want us to stop giving aid to Ukraine. That's not going to be for good. And I'm happy Harris pointed that out. Then here, Vice President Kamala Harris points out that Trump seems to be hiding from certain things. He's doing a lot of events still, but hiding from certain types of events.
Well, I wonder, what is he hiding? I also wonder what his staff is trying to hide by preventing or suggesting he not debate me again, not do these interviews. It is the norm, as you know, that presidential nominees will do a 60 Minutes interview. He has refused to do that. He is pulling out of interviews left, right, and center. And I think that what we see about him in public, whether it be his rallies or, as you said, would it be called just a solo dance? I don't
know that it has I don't think know that has a name to it.
Dance is really generous.
Yes, what that was. I think it does lead us, and it should lead us to observe that he is increasingly unstable. But you don't have to take my word for it. Listen to the people who know him best.
And then gets into the list of people who served right alongside him. Defense Secretary, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, communications staff members, etc. They say he should not be anywhere near the Oval Office. We've talked about it plenty. Let me know what you thought in the comments. Support the show by getting that bonus show, and you do that by clicking the join button below.